And I'm going to turn over now to our experts for today, Matt and Jenny.
Okay, so we're going to start today's session sort of building off the session that we had the last time we were together. And what we're here to talk about is an employer's thoughts on policies and practices. From a conflict of interest perspective, I don't have any economic conflicts of interest, but as I stated in the introduction, I am on the Recovery Friendly Workplace Advisory Council, and I'm on the board at Headrest. I'm also employed at Hypotherm, so I'm connected to this very closely. In review from the last time we spoke, this is important to employers because approximately 10% of the workforce in the US has a substance use disorder. So it's very likely that this is a problem that you have, whether you know it or you don't. It impacts work, right? So it limits our workforce. Unemployment is very low. So we want to have as many employable people as possible. There is data that tells us that there's decrease in productivity. The thing I like about this point the most, presenteeism was both physically present, but we want people to be as engaged as possible at work. Higher rates of potential workplace injuries and personnel turnover, sorry. So on to new information, investing in your workplace culture is important. One of the sort of founding principles that Hypotherm built our recovery-friendly efforts off is our culture. And this is data from Glassdoor's. 56% of workers ranked a strong workplace culture as more important than salary. And they said that they'd consider a workplace's culture before pay, so when they were applying for a job. So I think culture is incredibly important when we start talking about supporting people in recovery. And these are just some elements of workplace culture. Again, things that relate to this effort are workplace practices, environment. We're going to talk a little bit about policies and philosophies, and the fact that we're trying to help people. Again, employees in recovery are assets to your workplace culture. People that are in recovery tend to display the behaviors that we like to see in our employees and our associates. They can also provide powerful supports for people that are in your organization in recovery. And we've seen that extensively prevalent in our organization at Hypotherm. Resources that are available for creating a stigma-free workplace. I think once you have culture or understand what your culture is, stigma is the first thing that needs to be addressed. It's the first thing that Hypotherm addressed in their effort. We'll talk about our journey in later slides. The recovery-friendly workplace effort is a brilliant resource to start with. It's sponsored at the state level. It's been a platform that makes it a lot easier for all of us to discuss the issues that can sometimes be difficult related to substance misuse. The 4-panel that's on the slide came from one of the presentations I saw on Recovery Friendly. Most of this content I did not create. I stole from people that were better at this than me. But what I really like about it is, as employers, especially if you're an employee that has a good, healthy culture, you want to protect your people. And that's what this effort is about, is protecting the people that we employ, including people that are suffering from substance use disorder is important, because we know that isolation is one of the things that drives substance use. We want to empower people to be well and find recovery. It's not our responsibility to provide recovery. It's our responsibility to empower those that are struggling to find healthy recovery. And then lastly, we want to educate our workforce and be sort of aware of best practices, which all of you are demonstrating essentially by participating in this echo session. So thank you for that very much. A resource that I wish that we'd had at Hypotherm early on is this drug-free workplace toolkit on the SAMHSA website. It's in the reference material, and there's a link at the bottom of the slide. But again, a lot of this stuff 4 or 5 years ago, Hypotherm started to develop, and we did it without the knowledge of the resources that are available. So this is a really good resource provided by the work that the Recovery Friendly Workplace is doing. So if we want to talk about Hypotherm's journey, and then we'll eventually look at our policy and some of our practices, we started in 2015, and this list, or these lists, are not sort of, they don't cover everything that we did, but they sort of highlight the important things. I'm not going to read them all, but one of the real keys is in 2015, we established a task force. And that really sort of empowered associates and our employees to start to talk about the issues and tackle stigma. In 2016, one of the things that the task force recommended to start to look at stigma was we printed resource cards that we showed in almost every event that we hosted or participated in. And those initial cards had these bracelets attached to them. And I can distinctly remember the group tying all these bracelets to these resource cards. We might not ever do that again. But what was really powerful about that activity is suddenly people started to wear them. We didn't ask anybody to wear them, but it became very prevalent throughout our organization that people had these bracelets on, so we knew that it was a meaningful effort and that we needed to look at it further. In 2017, Jenny, who's sitting here with me, was crucial to the SUD policy change. She sort of shed a light on the work that the task force was doing, helped us get it in front of the management team, helped us facilitate the policy changes, and we implemented them. In 2018, we hosted a leadership summit in which we presented these changes. Most of the changes were not dramatic. It was more about language that was recovery friendly and safe practices, so people knew that they could come forward, but we'll look specifically at that in slides coming up. We joined the Recovery Friendly Workplace as an early adopter in 2018. In 2019, we established a recovery coach network, so we trained on-site recovery coaches. And then lastly, in a partnership with the CDFA, which is the Community Development Finance Authority, and a local treatment organization, which is Headrest, we've received funding and are piloting an on-site LADAC. So across 3 shifts in our manufacturing organization and throughout our New Hampshire facilities, we have a LADAC that's on-site available for people to sort of walk up and talk to about issues they may be having, people in their family, coworkers, or friends that they're potentially concerned with. So ultimately what we've done, oops, there's a slide missing here, is removed barriers, right? So there's a slide that I thought was in the presentation that sort of demonstrates the barriers in which Hypotherm has tried to remove. So somebody, whether they're an associate of ours or they have a family member that's potentially struggling with substance use disorder, they can get to the treatment that's available in the community. It's not Hypotherm's responsibility to provide that treatment, but we've identified points of access and done everything we could to remove barriers, to sort of streamline the process to get people to the resources and help that they need. That said, the policy changes that we made, this is our handbook policy, copied right out of the handbook. I'm not going to read it to its fullest extent, but one of the changes that we did make is under some circumstances, you may be terminated. It used to say you will be terminated. If you had a positive drug test 6 years ago at Hypotherm as a result of being on a substance misuse agreement, termination was your only option. That's what we did. We thought, well, we'd already given you a chance, and you, in some way, shape, or form, violated that agreement, and therefore you were terminated. We now think of that differently. We know that relapse is part of sort of healthy recovery at times, and seeking to understand that to its fullest extent has been very beneficial for us and our associates when they're thinking about reaching out for help. This is our substance misuse agreement. There's lots of legal language in here. So again, reading it is not what the intent is. We can share it if people are interested. But I do think what's important here is we highlight we're offering you an opportunity to be successful with your commitment to the misuse of substances and your well-being. So this is really seen as an opportunity. This is not sort of the end of the line. There's no sort of, if you're not immediately successful, you will be terminated. It's more about, we want to understand how we can help you be successful and get you the resources you need. But it's also important to understand that it's a commitment. It truly is a commitment, and there's accountabilities tied to it. Again, the substance misuse agreement continued. One of the changes we made is people are required to attend an evaluation with a licensed drug and alcohol counselor. It's funny, but our requirements prior to this used to just be a counselor. It wasn't even sort of cited as a LADAC. So we called that out specifically. We ask people to sign a release, so we understand that they're attending treatment. We don't want the details of their treatment plans, but we do want to understand that they're complying and getting the help they need, so we ask for that release. And then we have a testing program associated with our substance misuse agreement. One of the changes we made, it was always for a period of time, but it was from the date or the start of the substance misuse agreement. We have actually changed that from it's the date of your last test because of, or positive test, because we've allowed for relapse under certain circumstances if it's part of your healthy recovery. So if somebody was to relapse, that accountability clock resets itself so people understand that there is some accountability. So again, the process is intended to support recovery and people that are struggling with addiction. There's still accountability built into the program. And then lastly, we talk about the fact that there are on-site recovery coaches or our human resources generalists. And now if we were to update this, on-site LADACs to provide support if needed. One of the things that Jenny felt very strongly about and got added to our policy, because this is a formal HR policy that could end up in your HR record, is this line at the bottom where associate can come forth and identify, and they actually have the ability to identify that on this policy, saying that, hey, I chose to come forward to seek this help. It wasn't as a result of some potentially punitive sort of citing. So that has also been sort of a breakthrough or a removal of a barrier in a sense. So sounds easy, right? And the point is, confront stigma, right? Let people talk about it. Let's shine a light on the issue, create a safe culture, empower people to talk about it, change policies and practices. You know, I think the important thing that we've learned at Hypotherm is we've had to walk the talk. Just changing a policy didn't make meaningful change. Walking the talk and demonstrating that we mean it is what made the biggest difference. So there's references available. We're happy to answer any questions. That's all I have.